when you ask anybody if they watch pornography, their answer is always no. Yet when you check the statistics of people who watch pornography online, the results are always very alarming. Today we'll be talking about pornography and how to deal with pornography addiction. When we come back from this break, we'll meet our guest. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm May and this is Catholic Faith Forum. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that a lot of people shy away from for whatever reason, I don't know. But it really is an issue. Pornography. So today we're going to talk about how to deal with pornography. And I have two amazing guests in the house. I have Brother Elijah Exodus Irehiafe, OP, and Brother Joseph Abba. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's your take on pornography, this pornography issue? Because a lot of people don't like to talk about it. Everybody pretends they don't know anything about it, but yet it is something that is spreading wild like fire. So, what do you have to say?
Well, you understand why people will not want to talk about it, because it's not exactly something that you come out. It's not like saying I'm a good footballer that you come out proudly to talk about.
Yes.
So it's something, you understand why people don't talk about it, especially within our context as Africans.
Yes, we're always very conservative.
It's not something that you bring out. But pornography, as it were, it's a topical issue. It's something that we should be concerned about because it has a kind of a parasitic effect when it spreads like cancer, because it's something that is done underneath.
Nobody knows about it.
So you can't point and say, okay, this is where the problem is coming from. That's where we should attack. So it's a moral issue more than it is a psychological issue, and it's an explicit display, that's by definition now, explicit display of sexual content, highly sexual content, by means of pictures, audios, videos, and even in games, video games, you find them displayed in those things.
Okay.
So that's what we're dealing with.
Okay. So why is pornography wrong then? Because you know, a lot of people come from this angle of I'm not having sex, since they say fornication is a sin, so why can't I watch it? So,
well, you discover that when you talk about pornography, it is more or less like a removal of the real sexual act or its simulation from the intimacy of partners to more or less a fantasy world. So this is just like an escapist route, not facing the issues as they are. So there is a need actually to bring people back. That is why it's a moral issue that people have to face things as they come. And for us, it's a sin against chastity, because if you look at the conjugal act, it is supposed to bring about intimacy between partners. But now what pornography does is to take that away from the partners and makes the conjugal act it perverts it, more or less, to say that. And then the participants in the whole affair, those who produce it, those who distribute it, and then those who consume it, reduce themselves to objects of base pleasure. So this is more or less something very illicit.
Okay, but some people say that, okay, watching pornography leads to masturbation. What of those that say they're not masturbating, they're just watching to probably learn or something? What do you have to say about that?
Well, that would be to assume that pornography is only sin when masturbation comes in. Okay, that's a wrong assumption. Because pornography itself is a vice, masturbation itself is a vice. And it's not when the one is with the other that there is an issue. So now, for those who make that assumption, the first thing is to make them understand what pornography actually, maybe they do not understand what it is. Because my brother has rightly mentioned, there is a moral issue at stake when we deal with pornography. And for those who claim that they are using it to learn, I wonder what they are what exactly are they learning?
And they said they want to learn how it will be when they eventually meet their life partners and they are in marriage. So,
well, that's strange to imagine, because I do not I think there are other means one can get that. Maybe meet a psychologist, maybe meet people who are trained in that regard. Because eventually, they are not just going to limit themselves to learning. Pornography has an addictive tendency. So what happens when after learning, you can't get away from it? Then what will now be the excuse?
Okay. So you are both members of the Truth Board, right?
Sure.
Okay, so what's that about?
Well, I would like to say that wherever you find Dominicans, you're expected to find an abundance of contemplation.
Okay.
And then it is now the task of the brothers or the Dominicans to find new and effective ways of sharing the fruits of their contemplation. And so the Truth Board is more or less an outlet of the student brothers at Ibadan to share the fruits of their contemplation with people.
Okay.
So
how long has this been in existence and how does it work exactly?
We can actually look at the origin of the Truth Board in two senses, the remote and then the proximate sense. In the remote sense, I would say that the board started in 1990. At that point, the brothers wanted to have a kind of a philosophical reflection on pressing issues in the society. And so the board at that time was named Skepticus. But after that, the board continued till 2001, and then there was a period of suspension. The board was brought back in 2006. This is now the proximate origin with the name Truth Board. And at this time, it was more or less having a philosophical, theological conversation with the society. So that is purely what the board has been doing. And then it also experienced a period of suspension in 2017. But when it came back in 2018, it tried to make its outreach more flexible. And so we started organizing conferences, talks, and then trying to meet students at secondary and tertiary institutions.
Okay, so what's the production about for this year?
Well, the production for this year, just from the last part of the origin, as he was mentioning, is having worked with students in the past year upon our resumption, we realized that one of the most common issues they've had to deal with was pornography.
Interesting.
So when they come in the course of our discussions, maybe privately or when they want to ask questions, you see that there's this interest in this. So we decided, we reflected, and then we realized that, wow, this is actually something that's bothering people. And even though they cannot come out openly and say it, they are actually seeking answers.
Okay.
So we decided, okay, having spoken to students in schools about what pornography is and its effects and how it can be avoided, why don't we make our production this year centered on that thing, so that in this way we are able to reach out to a wider audience, including both not just students, limiting it to students now, because we know that there are cases where married couples have become infested with this disease. So we want to get it out there.
Okay, so I have to ask, is it a sin even when couples that are married watch pornography? It's still a sin?
Of course it is.
Okay. Explain, please.
If you listen to my brother when he was making his introduction on pornography, he mentioned a perversion of the conjugal act. What pornography is actually removing what sex ought to be and displaying it to a third party for the sole purpose of creating some kind of a sexual arousal to the third party. Now, the couples, that is a husband and a wife, are expected to share this intimacy amongst themselves. So when the husband and the wife sit down to watch sexual acts being displayed by a third party, then there is a perversion. Because the tendency is that they will now leave the intimacy which they're supposed to share among themselves and now be deriving that from a third party. And that could cause some kind of separation from the both of them, depending on who actually finds it more interesting than the other.
Okay, so you're saying all forms of pornography are wrong?
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to go deeper into how to deal with pornography addiction. But before we do that, we want to go on a break where we can see the opinions of people from the streets. We always ask people what they think about certain subjects that we take. So let's see what they have to say about pornography. Stay with us.
You're watching Catholic Faith Forum on TV, and we are on the street of Lagos to get responses for our topic. Please join me. I'm sure you've not forgotten my name, Judith.
Ha! Okay, there are two things that I can do. It depends on how I find it. I can just slap the phone out of the hand if I like if I'm sitting close. But I think I'm not a very violent person, at least some people think so. So I'll just tell you that you know that this is not allowed in this house. So I pretty much think that you should stop. And then you're filling your mind with stuff that is not very informing or stuff that's not very helpful to you. And I don't think that this is going to help you in any way. So I think that you should stop it. Pretty much talking to the person is what I would do at the end of the day. So
if I catch my child watching porn, the reality dawns on me. I feel terrible, and I won't feel dejected or I won't condemn myself. But the first question that comes to my mind is, have I done well as a mother? Have I tutored my child enough for him or her not to have fallen a prey of such? And above all, I will not castigate him or her, because I think it's trendy, but it's my own role as a mother to be watchful. The Bible says watch and pray. In as much as I want to give them some freedom, a bit of freedom, I should be able to guide them in the way of the Lord. So when I catch my child, I will do as much as possible to love him or her, bring him back home to me, and tailor him in the way of the Lord.
Well, I will try as much as possible to hide my displeasure and look for ways and means to talk to him and walk him out of that path. Because the question I want to ask myself is, why is he watching porn? Perhaps he's looking for certain satisfaction. I have to let him understand that such satisfaction is not proper for him, that there are certain satisfaction that is good and proper to his well-being. There are there are some that are destructive. And porn are very, very destructive by their nature. So I have to explain to him the reason why he should desist from such activities.
I think I'm just going to, be more psychologically, I'll handle it more like in a very psychologically aware manner, such that you don't push the person to start doing it behind you. Because if you come out so harsh or abusive or something like that, all you do is make them go deeper into the closet. So first of all, I'd like to know why you're doing it. Is it peer pressure, or you have personality issues, or like, okay, what's wrong? Why do you think you have to do this? Are you active already? These are the kind of questions you try to get from the other person to know what's necessarily forcing the person into it and stuff. Then you know how to advise better on it.
I think it shows that she needs help, even though I like to deny it a lot in this part of the world, but it goes to show he or she needs help, and go for counseling, therapy.
Welcome back. People always have interesting opinions about pornography, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but we have to talk about it. So I have to. Why is pornography so accessible? Why is it everywhere? Why is it so easy to gain access to pornography?
In response to that question, I'll pinpoint that to three factors, at least three factors.
Okay, three you mentioned.
Yeah, okay. So we are going to be talking about the production of porn, the distribution, as well as the consumption.
Okay.
Those three factors have shifted grounds from the past to now. And because something has happened to them, there's been an upgrade in the system.
Okay, so it's now easier to do all these things, and so it's just everywhere.
Much, much easier.
So you've been dealing with secondary school students, or they've been coming to you with their issues about pornography. So how do you tackle these issues? How do they actually get rid of this addiction? Because once you start watching pornography, most of them get addicted to it, and then they can't do without it. So how do they get rid of this pornography addiction?
Well, I will say the children we even deal with. Basically, most of them encounter pornography at very early stages in life.
Like how young?
5 years old, 6 years.
Jesus Christ.
So it is the fact that the society we are in is very sexualized at this point. There is an abundance of pornographic content in our society. So what we try to do is we try to use a kind of a process, because pornography is addiction is very difficult to solve all at once. Mm-hmm. So with that process, we're able to encourage the person for even coming out to understand that it's a problem to be solved. So we work on the process in that.
Personally, when people talk about eradication of pornography, I tend to always want to tell them that it will be an illusion to think that we are going to get to that point where
it's completely,
there'll be no pornography anymore.
I have to agree, yes.
Okay, because you don't even have to deal with these materials, even in adverts.
Yes. You know, there's sometimes you're on the phone and then you see something pop up and then you're wondering where did it come from? So it's almost as if it's being forced on people out there. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do to get people out, at least to reduce it, is to encourage, to point out to people the apparent dangers in these things. Okay.
There's a lot of deception in the distribution of pornography. A lot of deception. People are not meant to understand what it really is.
So they just get hooked and then they just keep going and going and going.
At the time they want to get out, they're already locked up to an extent.
Okay, you know, social media has become something else. Actually, you see, so a lot of the videos that we have online and all those things. So how has social media affected the distribution or the accessibility of pornography in our society today?
When I was speaking about the easy accessibility, I mentioned distribution, second factor. Social media has become due to the availability of internet, has become the easier route to distribute these things.
So it's just everywhere.
It's everywhere. You don't have to go to any shop, buy a material, hide it, go to the house, find a better time to watch it.
When your parents have gone
when they have gone, and then as you're watching, somebody is outside, you're on the lookout in case somebody is coming. Mm-hmm. No. Now what you need is just a smartphone and you need internet.
And that's all.
And then you can.
So there are no checks for this thing. There's no, if you're not 18 and above. In fact, even that stuff is still a problem.
Who checks it?
Nobody.
They say if you're not up to 18, don't use. So if I go ahead and click use, does the computer tell me no, you're not 18?
So there are really no checks for this thing. So what are some of the remedies to this pornography addiction? How do we help people who are addicted to pornography? Like, say for instance, I started watching porn since I was young. How do I get off it? How do I stop and start living my life afresh?
The movement has to be first of all the will of the person.
Okay.
The person who is really ready to come out from an addiction should know that he or she is going to have to deal with a lot. Maybe depending on the will, there are going to be relapses as the process begins. And now that becomes an issue. Will the person be willing to continue to push through? So when somebody comes and wants to begin that process, the first thing is you have to encourage the person. Not many people have the confidence or the courage to come out and talk about their personal life.
True.
So when somebody comes to you with that problem, you have to encourage the person. You have to do your best to restore some kind of self-esteem and self-worth. Mm-hmm. And then from then you can now begin a therapy. You can encourage the person to see a specialist.
Do we have those in Nigeria?
Yes, there are people. There are people who actually work on that specifically. Yes.
Okay, interesting.
In the course of our production, we've met a couple of those people who actually deal with these things.
Okay, so what's the role of the family in this situation? How does the family help the person who is actually immersed in pornography?
Well, I think the family is the domestic church. Mm-hmm. And so to start dealing with pornography, the family has a very important role to play. It might interest you to know that some persons encounter pornography at the first time from their parents. Wow. It's possible that some parents actually expose their children to pornography because they possess pornographic materials themselves. Mm-hmm. So the parents have to be good examples to the children. So whatever they tell them, they will be able to follow, because you have the force of good example. With that, the children will be able to follow whatever they learn from their parents. And then the parents have to be very open to the children, because some of these things, some children have the fear of discussing them with their parents. So if the parents are not open, it becomes difficult to talk about them.
Yes, because, I was always complaining about that thing, how there's no sex education. We don't have sex education in our homes at all as Africans. People always shy away from talking about sex with their children, and then children learn it from other places, and then it's too late.
What I came to realize recently in discussing with a few parents, they actually think that whatever concerns the moral life of their children is in the hands of their priest and their pastors. And
really?
Yeah. Some parents think that way. They think that, okay, I just have to feed the child, I just have to clothe the child, I just have to pay the school fees. If you want to know anything about Bible, go and meet Father. That's a very wrong notion.
Of course it is.
there's a reason why the church in her wisdom calls the family a domestic church. That should be the first place a child should encounter God.
Of course.
And parents are so caught up in providing material goods that they forget the spiritual goods of their children. And that's the problem. Parents should be concerned. They should be involved in the formation of their children.
Okay. So what can we do about pornography as a whole? Because apparently the lives of young people, they are so impressionable. And then is it peer pressure that makes them go into it in the first place? What are these things? What drives them? You said as early as 5 years old, someone has seen pornography, and it's actually scarring. I can't believe that someone as young as 5 has seen pornography. What were people doing? What were adults doing at that time?
To look at that would be, first of all, I think that the access to it has to come from maybe at 5 the child does not really know what he or she is doing, maybe, but unfortunately what actually leads to addiction is not a one-time thing. It's something that is done over and over and over and over again. Okay, and at some point the person begins to find some kind of comfort, some kind of
it becomes a normal thing.
Yeah, some kind of okay, having done everything, what is that thing that is now lacking today? Oh, my friend, and then they go back to it.
Wow.
So you have all of that. So sometimes it is not a case of people just wanting to be just bad. It's a case of people getting locked up. They feel this is a way of relaxation.
So it now becomes a part of them.
It becomes
so
a norm.
Okay.
And by the time they want to get out of it, that is when they now know the harm they've done to themselves.
Okay, thank you very much, brothers. It's been an exciting episode. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Thank you so much. Pornography is a moral sin, so please do your best to not indulge in it. And if you've already fallen for it and you are addicted to it, please do your best to stop it. Stop it, work hard, see a therapist, and do all you can to curb this addiction. Let's go to Know Your Faith for today's episode of What They Have for Us.
Welcome to Know Your Faith series. She is Judith.
And he is Colin.
Today we'll be talking about the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is a very powerful prayer. But first, what is prayer?
Prayer is the raising up of our heart and mind to God. A good prayer should contain adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication.
And we find all these in the Lord's Prayer. Adoration and thanksgiving we find in the very first phrase of the Lord's Prayer, which says, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we go further to ask for contrition when we ask God to forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And then supplication when we ask God for our daily bread, up to deliver us from all evil.
We find the initiation of the Lord's Prayer by Christ himself in the Gospel in Luke chapter 11 from verses 2 to 4 and Matthew chapter 6 from verses 9 to 13, where the disciples asked our Lord Jesus to teach them how to pray, and he taught them the Lord's Prayer.
The Lord's Prayer should be a model of what a prayer should look like. As St. Augustine already said, whatever we say when we pray well is already included in the Lord's Prayer.
Therefore, when you pray, there is no need for too much talk. What is important is the devotion and the fervor of spirit with which we pray and communicate to God.
The prayer is a proof of the wisdom of God, who compressed into few words the aspirations of the human heart in its communication with God.
So there you have it, guys. The Lord's Prayer is a very important prayer, and I encourage you to always say the Lord's Prayer.
Thank you for joining us today. Till next time,
be bold, be Catholic.
Collins and Judith. Before we go, brothers, can you tell us about your publication for this year?
Yes, we've themed our magazine for this year as the spectre of pornography, and it's exorcism by care. Care is an acronym for counseling, attention, retreat, and eradication.
Nice. So when is this coming out?
Our plan, we're hoping before the end of this month, our magazine should be out.
Okay, we'll be looking out for it.
Yes, and you can follow us too on our handles. Okay, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. The name is Truth Magazine. So just look for us, ask questions, drop comments, and there'll be someone there to attend to you.
Okay, thank you very much. To continue this conversation or to ask questions, make inquiries, suggestions, hit us up on our social media platforms at CFF on TV on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And for constant new content, go to Dominican Media Presents on YouTube and for past episodes of the show as well. Till next time, keep being saints in jeans and shirts.